Hello there and welcome back to another weekly vlog from Cloud with Chris. You're with me, Chris Reddington, and here we talk about all things cloud. So today, another weekly update, of course. We're going to be talking about just what's happened over the last week, what's coming over the next week, and just some news updates really for today's session. Before we do though, I just want to give a little bit of insight into me because I've bought something over the last week which I'm very happy with. And for anyone who knows me, they'll know I'm a massive Star Wars fan, and I think this is really cool. So thank you for the folks I spoke to on Twitter and got some opinions on this. I've started investing in getting replica lightsabers, so yeah, this is going to be something different. It's going to stay on the side of my room here, and it's just something different there to have in the office. So yeah, a pretty cool addition there. So I just had to show that on camera and make sure everyone saw that because I thought it was super cool. So, what's happened over the last week? Well, first off, released a brand new blog. It was the first in a couple of parts, really. So a lot of people have been asking me recently about my setup, what I've got going on with my PC build, with the lighting and everything going on for Cloud with Chris. So I've split it into two parts at least, maybe more, depending on when I write the upcoming one. But for the first part was all around my PC build. And what I've done is I've detailed through the various specs that I've got, how I've upgraded that over time, for example, and just part of the build process and some of the things I learned along the way. So go ahead, check that one out. I know it's not strictly cloud related, but a few people have been asking me about that, so I thought it was a good one to go and release there because of the interest from people. Next up, on Friday, just gone, released another episode, this time on the health endpoint monitoring pattern. So if you live in a world where you need to go and monitor multiple services or one service and its dependencies, for example, this is probably an architectural pattern for you. So go ahead, check that out. It's on the usual places: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and of course, as you can see on screen, if you are watching, www.cloudwithchris.com. So in terms of what is, I guess, coming up over the next week or so, I'm going to be doing another blog on Wednesday. So as I mentioned, it's going to be the second part of that previous blog, so this time looking at more of my recording setup, my streaming, etc., and what I've got going on. Also on Wednesday, I'll be releasing the first episode of a new series, a series that I have been teasing for quite some time, and that's the series that I'm calling Cloud Gaming Notes. So I'm joined in that episode by Lee Williams, and we talk about some of the early trends of what we're seeing in gaming, I guess, really basing it first on the typical game server hosting scenario and the trends that we see over time, and playing a bit of Minecraft as well. So you'll see that one on Wednesday evening, so go ahead and check that one out when it's available. And then on Friday, actually, a very different video. This one, I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to record. I have a guest in that one, Andrew Nathan. He was previously on the show, and we talk about mental health. And the reason that I'm so thoughtful about this one, you can probably see my tone has slightly changed, is this is the first time I've really publicly spoken myself about some of my own challenges with mental health. And I was really glad to have Andrew with me as well, someone who is such an advocate, so vocal about mental health overall. And I am in my kind of circles, with my colleagues, my friends, and my family. I'm very vocal about the importance of mental health. I haven't really spoken so broadly about it before, so editing that video was actually kind of hard. It was interesting actually editing that one, but glad that I did it, and hopefully I'll have more people on the show and we can talk about it even more, because it's such an important topic. And I think in the world that we're in today, where everything is fast-paced, constantly moving, just taking the time to focus on you and recognizing that it's okay to not be okay is important. So do check that one out, because I think regardless of your background, some of the experiences we talk about may be enlightening and just thoughtful there for you. So that will be coming out on Friday. So the only other update then is just to do with Azure Thames Valley. I know I've updated on that over the past couple of weeks. Just wanted to let you know, in case you are planning on coming along and joining us, that the date for the first session has changed slightly due to some logistics. So we're going to be doing it on the Wednesday instead now. So Wednesday, February the 17th. You can see the meetup page on screen. We need to update the details on the event, but that should be happening over the next couple of days or so. We've got all the details finalised. Just need to go ahead and get those pieces updated there. So that's it in terms of Cloud with Chris updates. Let's just go ahead and take a look at some of the recent Azure news updates here. So we'll start off, I guess, from the 25th was where we left off. There are new Azure Cloud Services deployment modes in preview. We'll talk about that in a moment. That's quite an interesting one. New general availability capabilities for Azure AD Insight. Additional regions for Data Factory, a new version of Python in Azure Functions in public preview, integration with Confluent Cloud, South Central availability zones, and availability zones is an excellent addition to any region, so I'm glad to see that in both South Central US and Germany West Central, so that's really good to see. 99.99% uptime for Azure AD Premium customers coming April the 1st. No, that is not an April Fool's joke or an early one. That is absolutely a great addition again, so we'll jump into that one a little bit later. Resource instance rules, again, for Azure Storage, that is, in public preview. We'll talk about that one in a bit. API management updates, Service Fabric and Mesh preview retirement, which looks like quite an interesting one. So if you've been looking at Service Fabric Mesh, might be worth taking a look at that. And then Azure Sphere, Azure Machine Learning, and various kind of cognitive service related updates there as well. So let's go ahead and first jump into the cloud services one. So you may have been aware, if you've been using Azure for some time, there is a service called Cloud Services. And, you know, it has these concepts of kind of a web and a worker role, and it's been around for some time. But one of the things is that it was still using the Azure Service Management kind of model. And what they're doing here is they're releasing a public preview for a new ARM-based deployment model. There are some changes to how that model works, and it's reflected in some of the branding and the naming as well. So they have the Azure Cloud Services Classic, as was, and they also have now the Azure Cloud Services Extended Support. So if you've been waiting for a solution for cloud services, you built on some of the earlier versions of Azure, you've been using cloud services, this might be one to go and take a look at for an easy, quick win to migrate to some of the ARM-based equivalents. Do remember, it's public preview, so usual things you need to consider with any preview there, but just FYI on that one. Azure AD Premium customers are getting a 99.99% uptime. Pretty much does what it says on the tin. The name of that article is very, very clear. The only thing I just want to add is, I think when you think about the cloud, identity is always really that security boundary that people really consider as the first barrier. Multi-factor authentication, for example, strong passwords, all of these things. Why is it important? Because if you start looking at some of the trends, I as a user can access those resources through an Azure portal, through an Azure CLI. I can go ahead, for example, and log into certain resources with Azure AD in most cases now as well for a number of resources. So that importance of getting identity right is critical. That's where things like Azure AD Premium come in. And the fact that Microsoft is now going to increase that SLA for those users, I think is a really great benefit as part of that particular offering. So go ahead, take a look at that, and think about your identity more broadly. It's not something you've considered already. Resource instance rules for Azure Storage now in public preview. So this one wasn't really on my radar, actually, and I had a quick look at this before going live recording this video, and it was interesting because what it's talking about is how some of those resources that you might want to connect with Azure Storage can't be isolated through a virtual network, some kind of IP address, but you want to secure and restrict the storage account to only be accessed by certain application resources. So it looks like this is the solution that they're looking to pull together for that. And it looks like it's based, from what I can see in the docs here, at least, on system assigned managed identity. Looks like it's in public preview for all public cloud regions. So maybe worth just experimenting, taking a look at that, and seeing if that works for you at all. But again, preview, so do be mindful of that. Next up, I wanted to show a different resource section, let's say, a different set of updates. And this is to do with the Azure Architecture Center. So if you've never been to the Azure Architecture Center, take a look. A lot of the videos that I've been putting together with folks have been focused around the content in the Azure Architecture Center, these cloud design patterns. And what they do is they do a monthly kind of digest in terms of new articles that have been added and updated. So every month, this is probably something I'll just include as a recap for the prior month. So we can see, for example, if I just switch windows here, there are some, for example, which fit into the Microsoft well-architected framework and some pillars to consider. So things like monitoring for performance efficiency, talking about things like scalability, reliability, metrics, application level monitoring. There are some, for example, which are more operational, let's say, so thinking about key and secret management and giving you some guidance there. Or there are things like different, I guess, reference architectures and principles to go and abide by on a technology by technology basis. So you can see, for example, this is part of an AKS Day 2 operation guide and some different considerations to be made when you're thinking around how you do your cluster upgrades. Goes in a bit of depth there. So again, another good addition to those docs. But there's a wealth of information in the Azure Architecture Center. Cloud design patterns, well-architected framework, general kind of principles to follow. Cloud adoption framework, of course, is a very big one that we'll be talking about probably in a few weeks, I think. So there's a whole host of information that is really, really useful on that site. So again, as mentioned, there are number of articles updated over January, so go and take a look at that one. Next up, the Azure DevOps blog. Only one that I wanted to call out today in terms of articles, and that was another article here by Peter Detender, who I think previously wrote one on Azure container instances, if I remember rightly, and how you can use that with Docker. This one talks all about really what a service connection is, what a service principal is, and how these work in the context of Azure DevOps. So again, if the identity side of things has puzzled you a little bit, go ahead and take a look at that one. And then 2 updates on the GitHub side, which I think were particularly interesting. Number 1 was about how they deploy GitHub and improving how they deploy GitHub. In summary, it focuses on a few different pieces. One is the chat ops side of how they're working, also talking about the different canary stages that they have, and then how they go and solve that, because the challenge that they had is they grew so quickly that they kind of overwhelmed their chat channel where they were doing chat ops, is what it says in this article. So again, take a look at that, because it's a really interesting article just to understand how they went and solved that. And of course, they do mention at the bottom, they've taken some of that thought process into GitHub Actions, and also will keep building upon their own learnings as well there. And finally, again, another interesting one from an engineering perspective, I thought, talking about how they go ahead and make the GitHub homepages fast. So, we've talked about previously around things like static content and the idea how they can make your static websites very performant. What they talk about in here are some tips and tricks around things like JavaScript and how they go and lazy load certain things, how they avoid unnecessary calculations, and how they've optimized for things like CPU usage and a number of different other pieces. Really interesting article. So if you're in that kind of front end space and you're also interested in optimizing, pretty good one actually to go and look at. So certainly go ahead, take a look at that one, because it might give you a few ideas there. And that's it. That's it for this particular episode. So keeping it nice and light this week. So All there is to say is thank you for watching this one, and you know what to do. If you've liked this video, please go ahead and like the video down below. And of course, please subscribe if you haven't done so already, and hit that notification bell. As soon as I get new content, you will be notified. And of course, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and cloudwithchris.com. No matter how you enjoy listening, please do go ahead and support on those channels. And if you have enjoyed it, you know others that you think will enjoy the content as well, please go ahead and share with them. I'm almost reaching 250 subscribers on YouTube, which is great. I am aiming to get to 500 by the end of the year and really raise my community presence, as I've mentioned on a few prior vlogs. So your support is greatly appreciated on that. So with that, thank you for listening again to this weekly vlog, and see you later in the week for a few video updates. Bye for now.